That breaking news right now at noon. Atlanta's public transit agency is under a federal investigation. MARTA's safety and operations are now being looked at following a deadly stabbing that killed a 66-year-old. Now the clock is ticking on Capitol Hill, where U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has directed the Federal Transit Administration to launch a full review, leaving MARTA with only days to respond. Several candidates in statewide races are calling for urgent security improvements all across Atlanta's transit system. So right now at noon, we are digging deep into this big story. Thanks for being with us. I'm Brooks Baptiste. And we want to begin with Atlanta News First Don Shipman, who is live outside the Oakland City Station, where the most recent deadly stabbing happened. Don, you've been reading over the federal government's investigation.
Yeah, I have. And here's what the federal government is saying. They're saying that what happened here at this station and at stations across the system is just unacceptable.
A deadly stabbing, a federal investigation. MARTA is now under the microscope. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is directing the Federal Transit Administration to investigate MARTA's spending, security, and overall safety.
I only see the president of the police after a crime's been committed.
The federal probe follows a string of violence in recent weeks on MARTA properties. 66-year-old Margaret Swan was killed in a stabbing on a train at the Oakland City Station this past Saturday. Investigators say that her accused attacker, John Elijah Matthews, went after her less than a minute after he boarded. That attack comes less than a week after another stabbing at the Georgia State Station. In a statement, Secretary Duffy says every American should be disturbed by the horrific crimes we have seen on MARTA in the last month. No one should be forced to fear for their safety simply because they choose to ride public transit. Atlanta News First has reached out repeatedly for an on-camera interview with MARTA leadership. All requests have been denied. But MARTA did put out this video statement.
We are committed at MARTA to enhancing these efforts, including more officers in the stations, on the train platforms, and on train patrols.
Still, many riders are on edge.
It's really scary, and I have to be more cautious and vigilant about my surroundings. With the World Cup coming, I know a lot of things, things could get worse.
In a new written statement, MARTA says it, quote, welcomes the opportunity to share its safety investments with federal officials.
And that federal investigation is giving MARTA 15 days to respond. We're live here in Southwest Atlanta. Don Shipman, Atlanta News First.
Don, thank you. And it is important to note that since President Donald Trump has returned to office, Secretary Duffy has launched similar transit investigations in several major cities, including Chicago, Washington, D.C., and New York City. The Federal Transit Administration says MARTA's crime rate is nearly twice the national average, but MARTA officials are pushing back on that data, saying crime is actually down. The MARTA Police Department tracks the incidents that its officers respond to each year, and here's a look of those reported numbers since 2020. According to MARTA Police, crime has decreased by 26% between 2024 and 2025.